Good evening and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the December 11th, 2018 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. It is my pleasure to call this meeting to order. If you haven't already done so, there are copies of our agenda on either side of the room. Feel free to pick one up. You can follow along with tonight's proceedings. You'll see there on the conveniently placed ledges on either side of the room. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment tonight, both with respect to things that are on tonight's agenda, as well as a segment that we like to call Item 4, which is reserved for public comments of a general nature. At that point in the meeting, if any members of the audience have any questions or comments of a general nature with respect to things that are not on tonight's agenda, we would welcome you to please come to the podium at that time. Let us know what's on your mind, and we'll look forward to hearing from you. But first, it is our proud custom to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So I'd ask everyone present to please rise and join us in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Awesome. Thank you very much. And now, I would like to ask our fine village clerk, April Holden, good evening, to please call the roll.
Commissioner Wallace?
Here.
Commissioner Earl?
Here.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Here.
Commissioner White?
Here.
Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Here. Thank you very much. That brings us to Item 3, which pertains to minutes of prior council meetings. We have one set of minutes to review and approve tonight, and those are our regular council meeting minutes from December 4th, 2018. If there are no questions, comments, concerns, confusion, or contortions, I would ask for a motion to approve, please. That looked like confusion to me.
I move the council approve the meeting minutes from December 4th, 2018 as presented.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Those minutes are approved. And even before you could take your coats off, we're already at Item 4, which is reserved for public comments of a general nature. As previously advertised, if any members of the audience have any questions or comments of a general nature with respect to things that are not on tonight's agenda, I'd ask that you please come to the podium, let us know who you are, and we would welcome hearing from you. Very good. Well, it is the season, right? Visions of sugar plums dancing in everyone's heads. There's no room for public comment. We'll move on to Item 5, the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to... Well, hold on a second. Time out. You almost thought I was going to forget about it, didn't you? I would like to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda. I don't know. Now I'm going to be told I need to act. I don't need to remove it anymore. That was the old days. We didn't have motions to do that stuff. It's automatically removed.
So
for those who hold on a second.
I know what you're going to say.
No, you don't. No, you don't. For those keeping score at home, Item C, 5C as in Charlie, is being removed from the consent agenda. It will be voted on separately. So with that, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda without Resolution 2018-8007?
I move the council approve the consent agenda as presented with the exception of Item C, which has been removed from the consent agenda.
Second.
Questions or comments from the audience with respect to any of the remaining items on the consent agenda? Questions or comments from members of the council? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. The consent agenda without Item C passes unanimously. Now, do I have a motion to approve Resolution number 2018-8007, authorizing acceptance of public improvements for Nelson Meadows subdivision?
I move that council approve the resolution authorizing acceptance of public improvements for Nelson Meadows subdivision as presented.
Second.
Questions or comments from members of the audience? Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. Mark Cronin, 1117 Jefferson. I live in about the southeast corner of this development. I'm just confirmation that the maintenance of the easement on the east side of it and on the parkways will continue to take place once this is confirmed, and then when after the property may be sold.
I'm going to pose that question to our outstanding village staff. Mr. Fieldman, how are you this evening?
I'm good, Mayor Tully, thank you, and thanks, Mr. Cronin, for your question. Yes, the developer, there's a 2-year maintenance period for the public improvements to make sure that they continue to operate as they are accepted. So there is a maintenance period, and all other village codes for property maintenance continue to apply.
Okay, and then will you be able to inform, he's looking to sell the property. Any way we can find out who the new owner might be if they ever sell it? Does he have to inform anyone?
That would be a public transaction. The subdivision, the lots that comprise the subdivision are being marketed for sale. I suspect that any prospective purchaser will probably come meet with Director Popovich and his staff, and then we could work with the neighborhood to let people know if that transaction has been completed.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, likewise. Happy holidays to you. Good evening, Mr. Schofield. How are you?
Good evening. My name is John Schofield, and I live at 1125 Jefferson Avenue. And just parenthetically, I believe the answer to Mr. Cronin's question is that the seller was required to give the village 30 days' notice before the transfer of the property. But I don't know when that expires. So that might be a small item to check. I am here not to endorse or oppose the resolution. I think the resolution will pass unanimously as it should. But rather, I wanted to make a few points on the record with respect to the action as it will carry forward in the future. So, can we flip that one? Is it working? Yeah. We're going to try technology here. Okay. So, this is where I live. South of the 6 of us, from Mr. Cronin down to the end of the block, south of those 6 lots is St. Joseph Creek's South Branch. To my experience, it has never actually flooded over the fence or under the fence into my backyard, but it's come rather close several times. And then north of us and uphill from us is the Nelson Meadow subdivision. And I make this point in the beginning because stormwater is a paramount theme of what I'm going to speak to. And if the stormwater infrastructure fails, if it doesn't work as designed, we get wet. So that's the principal reason for our neighborhood concern going forward with this project. So far, of course, there are no houses. There's a few to the street, but there's no houses and no decks and no driveways. So the impermeable surface at this point is fairly much intact. But as those 10 houses get built, this permeable surface will decrease considerably. And so it really is important to us that the stormwater works the way it's supposed to. So this is the measure in question. I thank you for creating this speaking slot by moving it from the consent agenda. The first thing I want to do is to thank the professional staff. This project's now been ongoing for 14 years. And over the last 3 or 4 years, it's really been delightful to work with the village and stormwater engineer, Curry Bear. She's been extraordinarily professional. She's been thorough. She's been vigilant in making sure that everything is done right or redone until it is right. She's come out frequently when there have been storms to check on whether the stormwater is being channeled as it should into the detention pond. And she's really been a delight to work with. She's been open and honest and available and at the same time cheerful in dealing with us as neighbors. So I think she really deserves a great thank you from us and from the village for doing such a great job on this very complicated project. I'd also like to say briefly my thanks for the village clerk's office, who have very cheerfully responded to my twice-a-month FOIA requests to keep on top of this project. So my second topic is that I wanted to talk a little bit about what goes forward from this date, because we're not done. This is a landmark event. You're accepting the public improvements, which will then trigger the ability to build on these properties. But the risk we are exposed to in terms of stormwater continues for quite some time. And it's going to take vigilance on the part of the village to be sure that we're dry. This eye chart is not meant to be read from your distance, but rather to emphasize the complexity of the project. There are 30-some inlets and culverts and 50-some sections of pipe. And of course, it's a nightmare to think of some groundhog crawling into just the wrong pipe and dying, and we only find out about it when the street floods. More probable, we're going to have 10 builders building 10 houses, or we're going to have 10 houses built by some number of builders. And during that period, I think there's a credible risk that dirt will be moved around, that culverts will fill or be covered, swales and berms will get rearranged in the process of doing the construction. And so it's my hope that the village will have the available staff to follow up on this during this long period. Even after that, there is some risk, as we've seen in other places in the village, where a homeowner will come in and try to construct a berm of his own in some place to divert stormwater in a way different than what is planned here. So because of the complexity of this, and in my mind it's very complex for 5 acres, we really do want to be sure that the village is committed to the same sort of quality of attention to the stormwater matters going forward as we've had so far with Curry. Okay, that's my second point. So Mike, you can pass that around now if you will. So the third point I wanted to make is to talk a little bit about the detention pond and its plantings. You should have received an email from Irene Hoekstrom in the last day. And I believe I forwarded her initial comments to you when they were first made in October. Irene is a registered landscape architect. She's also a very active person in the civic affairs of the village, and I know her from the Pierce Downer Heritage lines. And so at one point I was remarking that the plants in the pond seem to have come along well over the summer, and she volunteered to go look at them. Now, I can't look at them as a landscape architect. I can only see that they're green. And she did go and have a look at them. And from what I understand, I'm not this is not my field expertise, but from what I understand, these plants in the bottom of the detention pond are functional. They're not just pretty. They are planted for the purpose of clearing pollutants out of the pond water before it's released into St. Joseph Creek. Is that correct? Dave says yes.
That makes sense to me.
So there was a landscape plan submitted to the village as part of the approval process for what plants in what quantities would be placed where in the detention pond for this purpose of this sort of passive cleansing of the stormwater. And as I read Irene's comments, of which I've now passed along a copy to you, she says that in general the plan was a good one, but the execution was flawed. And as a result, some of the wrong kinds of material were planted, and in some very visible places, nothing has survived. So there's essentially a big hole in the plantings where you now see ice in the middle of the pond. And further, her professional advice is that in the absence of the proper plantings in the position, unwanted species have invaded. Invasive species have taken over, as they will, in any place where they're not properly excluded or where they're chased out by better plants. So her comments were, as you can read there, that there are 4 things that need to be done. I don't think I need to read them into the record, but April has the paper there to sort of digest. And her final conclusion is that it's really critical time for this installation. Maintenance and replacements are key to its success. And so even though you're accepting the public improvements, and even though the detention pond is one of those public improvements, we're hoping that the village has retained enough control and enough funds to make sure this is done in the next year, preferably in the spring. I did check with Curry Bear this morning, and she said she had already discussed this with the developer, and although I don't think there was any, I did not hear that there was any commitment, the village has held back funds so that should the developer decline his duty to do this, the village could, in one way or another, either compel it to be done or to do it themselves. Is that correct, David?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I want to put a pin in this to say you're accepting the public improvements, but we know of at least one flaw and have documentation of one flaw in those public improvements that we genuinely hope will get taken care of expeditiously in the spring and then monitored through whatever the life of the agreement is to be sure that it doesn't fall back into its old ways. So, and then finally, I just wanted to make a comment about information, the archive that was joked about. Since the first trauma of this project, 14 years ago, it has been 14 years since this kicked off. We've been collecting every available public document that has become available and indexing them to some extent to build up an archive. And I must say, I know it's at least as good or better than the village's archive because sometimes I get interested questions from the village about where something is. For example, the landscape plan was elusive for a long while until it finally turned up. So I have this archive at neighbors.nelsonmeadow.com. I've seen over the course of the last few months especially a number of fact-free conjectures on Nextdoor and other places, and I've tried the best I can to refer those to factual sources. And this is the place where I believe the public can find factual sources should there be questions or speculation about the matter. And I also have, and I've already passed them out to members of the council, I also have some cards with reminder suitable for magnets on refrigerators if someone wants to pick up a reminder of where to find this material. So thank you for your time. Any questions that I can address from my point of view?
No, thank you very much, Mr. Schofield. Obviously, we have recognized and appreciated your diligent engagement in this process for
14 years.
more than 14 years by my measure, and I'm one of the few up here that have actually been along with you that long for that ride. I think the archive someday, some historian will be very grateful you created it because when they write the book or they do the hologram, whatever it might be.
We need to find a history major someplace who wants to be interested.
Someone will appreciate.
But it won't be me, I promise you.
The great cache of information that you've collected. A few things. First of all, I dare say that the awareness and attention and tools for the execution of stormwater management are better now than they were 14 years ago. I would add to that the regulations have become more restrictive with respect to new construction and stormwater management by at least 2 or 3 times over that period, including some very recently involving what impact a new construction can have in our community. I would further say, number 2, that I'm pretty sure that I can expect the same, if not better, commitment to vigilance in terms of stormwater ordinance observation going forward that we've had in the past, regardless of who's sitting up here or who may be employed by our staff. Number 3, with respect to the detention pond plantings and the detention pond itself, I note that the resolution that I've been asked to sign later tonight, assuming this gets approved, has a paragraph 2 that notes that the irrevocable standby letter of credit is going to keep about $130,000 aside for the very purpose of ensuring the maintenance of public improvements in accordance with section 20.407 of the village code. So I would say there are 6 figures of funds that have been set aside for that amount. Furthermore, paragraph 3 of the grant of easement that was entered into back in 2014, as I'm sure you know, specifically gives the village the power to go in and make improvements to the, or maintenance or improvements to the detention area if they are not performed by the owner, actually the homeowners association, whether that's made up of the developer or the residents who ultimately purchase homes in that area. And I don't need to go into the terms, but I take comfort from knowing that those provisions are in here. And again, I would note that if I'm not mistaken, the ability of the village to not only do that work and find sources of funding for it is something that we did not have in place 15 years ago, and today we do. So I think that's a good thing. And then I've already made my comment about the archive, so I will simply conclude by, good to see you, and thank you for your comments, both today and in the past.
The neighbors are all grateful for all the changes that you just identified, because they do in fact seem to provide better protection for the neighbors of projects like this.
And more tools for your local government to align with the expectations of the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to item C? Questions or comments from members of the village council? This is 14 years in the making. No director's cut comments? I've already said mine. All right, hearing none, I'll ask for a roll call, please.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Matter 5C is approved unanimously. So we have to take a screenshot of the meeting, Mr. Schofield, and put that in the archive.
I'll do a video.
That brings us to, I don't want to put the video. That brings us to the end of our consent agenda, and on item 6, which is our active agenda. We have several items on our active agenda tonight, including things that are deceptively lengthy. We'll begin with item 6A as an apple. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance with respect to the 2018 aggregate tax levy?
Martelli, I move the council adopt an ordinance to adopt the 2018 aggregate tax levy ordinance as presented.
Second.
Questions or comments from members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the village council? Commissioner Waldeck, good evening. Happy holidays to you.
Happy holidays. Thank you, Mayor. It's been pointed out that we had many meetings on this, and I have to say that of all the years that I followed the budget, we're probably about 20 years now. It's been improved every year. The process, I think, what was the last year or the year before, we got an award for transparency in our budget, and it continues to improve, and that's fabulous. So the public, everybody has a chance to look at this. We've talked about it. We have meetings, so it's very transparent. And I would also like to say that the council and staff has been very responsive to anybody bringing issues up regarding the budget, and there have been very few. And considering the fact that this budget will affect the future councils, it's nice to know that those sitting up here that may be on a future council have approved this, or are likely to approve this budget. And we haven't heard any comments from any of the public or possible other members of a future council. So the fact that we approved this looks like it'll go into the future council without any problems. So it's been very transparent, and we've been very responsive, and I'm very happy to see this go through. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions from the council with respect to the 2018 aggregate tax levy? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter passes unanimously and brings us to item 6B as in boy. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance levying of taxes for the fiscal year commencing on the first day of January 2018 and ending on the 31st day of December 2018 for the Village of Downers Grove Special Service Area Number 2, otherwise known as the Downers Grove Downtown Service Area?
Martelli, I do move that this council adopt an ordinance for the levying of taxes for the fiscal year commencing on the first day of January 2018 and ending on the 31st day of December 2018 for Village of Downers Grove Special Service Area Number 2, all is presented.
Second.
Questions or comments from members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the village council? I have one, either for our village attorney or our village manager. Why in the world, on this day, December 11th of 2018, would we adopt a levy that starts on the first day of the year and ends on the last day of 2018? I'm just baffled. Why is that?
In Illinois, taxes are paid 1 year in arrears, and the origin of that practice of collecting, in this case, the 2019 taxes in 2020 and the 18 taxes and thereon. I believe that was a practice started in the Depression in the 30s as a way to provide for some cash flow relief during those hard economic times.
Thank you very much. Now, let it never be said that we don't try to teach you something during village council meetings. Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter passed unanimously and brings us item 6C as in Charlie. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance levying of taxes for the fiscal year commencing on the first day of January 2018 and ending on the 31st day of December 2018 for the Village of Downers Grove Special Service Area Number 6, otherwise known as the Fairview Fire Protection District?
Martelli, I move the council adopt an ordinance for the levying of taxes for the fiscal year commencing on the first day of January 2018 and ending on the 31st day of December 2018 for the Village of Downers Grove Special Service Area Number 6, as presented.
Second.
Questions or comments on this item from members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter passes unanimously. Coming to the next item on our agenda, we have 10 special service areas, and I could read a lot of these, and it could be very entertaining, but I'm going to suggest that I ask for a motion to adopt an ordinance with respect to items, active agenda items, D as in David through I as in iodine. It's just combining items D through I on our agenda. They all relate to levying of taxes for the same time period for special service areas
In the amount of 0.
4 through 10,
In the amount of 0.
in the amount of 0.
So there is no, that's why we can do this together, because it's 0. With that, Martelli, I move the council adopt 6 ordinances inclusive ordinance 2018-7990 through ordinance 2018-7991 and 2018-7993 through 2018-7996. In the aggregate, all is presented.
Second.
Questions or comments on these items as combined from members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the village council?
Just a brief comment. My understanding is that these special service areas exist in the event it becomes necessary in the future to impose a levy to comply with an obligation of the homeowners. And as of right now, no taxes are being levied at the current time or in the 2018 fiscal year with respect to those special service areas.
Correct. Thank you, Commissioner. 2 things. Why in the world would someone have to do that? Although it's a good example because we just talked about Nelson Meadow Subdivision. One of the special service areas on this list is Special Service Area Number 8, otherwise known as Nelson Meadow Subdivision. I assume that the answer is state law.
That's correct. A 0 levy is required. You have to levy something actively each year to make these valid and legal. So in the years you don't need any money, you actually have to approve an ordinance levying 0.
Fascinating. Springfield works in mysterious ways. Roll call, please.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. All those matters are approved unanimously. And now let's move to one of my favorite topics of the year, and those are tax levy abatements. Do I have a motion to adopt ordinances ORD 2018-7997 through 2018-8004, shown as active agenda items J through Q, as presented?
I move the council adopt ordinances number 2018-7997 through ordinance 2018-8004, which is items J through Q on this evening's agenda. All is presented.
Second.
Questions or comments on the abatements from members of the audience? I've never had anyone in 16 years object to an abatement. Questions or comments from members of the council? I just have a question, because we're being interactive tonight. What's an abatement?
It means to basically give back or not collect. So these are property taxes that have been levied but then abated, given back, and since not collected at all, because we have other revenue sources that we can use to pay these obligations.
Thank you. So as I understand it, we again have to levy these taxes in the first place. One might ask, well, if you're going to abate it and not collect it, why are you levying it? Well, we explain that in part one of our documentary. Part two is when we have other sources of funds to pay these bonds, we have to levy, but then we abate the levy, so no dollars are actually collected.
Yes.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Those combined matters also pass unanimously. That brings us to the end of our active agenda on item 7, which is our first reading or our workshop agenda. Our workshop agenda is a little bit different than the active agenda in that these items are presented for discussion and consideration purposes only. No formal action will be taken tonight on any of these items. What we traditionally do is ask our fine village staff to introduce the items for discussion, and we'll start with the council, and then we'll open it up for any questions or comments or further statements from the audience, and then probably come back to the council. And since I've been talking way too much, I'm going to turn things over to our village manager, Dave Fieldman, for presentation of the items on tonight's first reading. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Tully. There are 4 items on tonight's first reading agenda. And just to keep everybody on their toes and to accommodate some special guests and residents that are with us tonight as petitioners, we are going to skip item A for now. We will get to it tonight. We're just going to start with item B and then circle back to item A. Item B, a resolution to approve a final plat of subdivision at 3970 Douglas Road, will be presented by Jason Zawilla, our planning manager. Stan couldn't be here tonight with a family obligation. Jason recently joined our team. He is a 12-year resident with his family at the village of Downers Grove. He has extensive urban planning experience in faraway lands known as Woodridge. And
Where?
other places like Mount Prospect. We are so glad he is a part of our team. I've known Jason for a long time, as have many of our current staff members. So welcome to his first council meeting tonight, Jason.
Good evening, Jason. Welcome to the team and welcome to the podium. Good to see you.
Thank you, thank you. It's my pleasure, my inaugural meeting as a staff member, not just a resident. So that being said, good evening, Mayor, council members. The first case that I'm going to give just a brief presentation on is 3970 Douglas Road. So the applicant is requesting a final plat of subdivision approval to subdivide the subject property into 2 buildable lots of record. The subject property, consisting again of 2 parcels, is located at the northwest corner of 40th Street and Douglas Road. The first parcel is located at 3970 Douglas and is approved with a one-story single-family house and a detached garage. The second parcel, as you see on your screen, is located immediately west of the single-family residence located adjacent and north to 3970 and currently has no frontage, as you can see on the screen, along 40th Street. So with the proposed subdivision, the proposed Lot 1 will now have frontage along 40th Street and will be developed with a new single-family home. The existing home at 3970 Douglas Road will remain on the proposed Lot number 2. It will not be demolished. At their November 5th meeting, the Plan Commission unanimously recommended approval. It found that the proposed subdivision meets the recommendations of the comprehensive plan and complies with the zoning ordinance and subdivision ordinance. As such, the applicant's request is recommended for approval on the December 18th active agenda. I'm certainly available for any questions, and the applicant is also here this evening.
Very good. Thank you for the presentation. Questions or comments from members of the village council for staff or the applicant? Any questions or comments from members of the audience? All right, well, we'll let you off the hook easy the first time. Thank you.
I'm just going to jump into
Go for it.
the second item, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
We lost connection.
Something had to go wrong.
It's part of the hazing ritual here at the village of Downers Grove.
As long as they can give it a shot.
Very
All right,
well.
so with the second item on tonight's agenda, the applicant, Midwestern University, is requesting approval of a planned unit development. amendments for revised campus master plan. So for everybody's benefits, okay, there we go. The subject property is located on approximately 105 acres of land on the south side of 31st Street. The request in front of you this evening is for a major amendment to that previously mentioned master plan, which is in front of you, which was last amended in 2015. The existing support services building, highlighted with the arrow on the screen, this is known as Hassel Hambrick Hall, is proposed for demolition and will be replaced with a new support services building located southeast of the existing location at the center of campus. As the master plan shows, taller structures are planned for and clustered in the center, and limits development on the site's perimeter to those that are similar in scale to the adjacent residential in order to reduce the impact on those properties. The proposed building meets all required height and building setbacks, and the new modern facility will be up to 5 stories. As it relates to traffic, the applicant has stated that there is no anticipated increase in staff numbers or student enrollment with the new support services building. At their November 5th Plan Commission meeting, it was unanimous approval, found that the proposal is appropriate use in the district, compatible with the comprehensive plan, and also met all standards of the planned unit development amendment per the zoning ordinance. And as such, this is also requested for approval on the December 18th active agenda. I am available for any questions once again, and then we also have several representatives from Midwest University that are here in attendance.
Terrific. Thank you very much for the presentation. Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Well, I'm just going to add, it's always a delight to see Dr. Geppinger here. Nice to see you. And it's always nice, whenever we see you in the audience, we know that something exciting is happening at Midwestern University. I have been privileged to see a lot of different investment and reinvestment and improvements in the campus, and it's really grown and thrived and truly become an important part of the community. And looking forward to hopefully running by the construction during the 2019 Groovin' in the Grove, which I think is going to be the 30th annual, if that's correct. So we're looking forward to that, and always looking forward to the continued investment and reinvestment that Midwestern University does in our community. So I don't have any questions. I always know that our projects done there are done well and always turn out to be very nice additions. Questions from the audience? And after saying that, I'm sure there's nothing that the petitioner wants to add. But I would be remiss if I didn't give you the opportunity.
Well, and I was just going to say, I'd be remiss if I just didn't get up and say thank you to every one of you, you know, for allowing us to grow and develop and to expand and to offer so many, you know, master and doctorate degrees here in Downers Grove. We're very proud of our campus. We are certainly proud of our opportunity to partner with the village on a regular basis. So on behalf of all of us, I wanted to say thank you very much. We appreciate this partnership very much.
As do we. Thank you very much. Good to see you. Any other questions or comments on this item from members of the audience? All right, very good. Well, thank you for the presentation. Nice job, Jason. Not even though they pulled the mouse out from you at the last minute. Good recovery.
Yes, well done. Okay, so those were items B and C. We're going to jump back to item A, which is a motion authorizing approval of key terms for a redevelopment agreement. This has to do with our village facility plan, the property that we're sitting in right now. Here to present background information on this item, at the podium no less, is our deputy village manager, Mike Baker.
Mr. Baker, good evening. Happy holidays.
Good evening, Mayor. Happy holidays to you, members of the council. Yes, we are talking about facilities tonight, and the fundamental reason that this item is being presented is because the village has long-standing problems with 2 facilities, the police station and Village Hall. I'll pause for just a moment to allow our guests to exit.
I think you're good.
All right. So yes, long-standing problems with 2 facilities, the police station and Village Hall. The buildings are functionally obsolete, which create operational difficulties, and substantial maintenance work has been deferred on both buildings. At the same time, this property that the buildings sit on is an underutilized asset. And what we're discussing this evening is an attempt to monetize the asset in ways to help solve facility challenges and lower the cost to the village. Specifically, this item requests a motion that authorizes approval of key terms of a redevelopment agreement with Locations Finders International, or LFI, and direct staff to take actions necessary to comply with the key terms. LFI is a firm that specializes in retail, industrial, and medical development throughout northern Illinois. The firm submitted an offer of $8 million to acquire 3 acres of the village's civic center property on which to construct a 3-story medical office building. On October 2nd, the village council directed staff to negotiate key terms for a redevelopment agreement with LFI. Sale and redevelopment of the property would serve an important step in solving the long-standing facility challenges related to the police station and village hall. The revenue from the sale of land and the property taxes paid on the development would be pledged to help cover the cost to the village for the construction of a new combined police station and village hall. So now we'll look visually at where we are. So here is the Civic Center site. The black boundary line represents the area to be redeveloped. It is currently the site of the village hall, the police station, and a small building on Curtis Street. The Washington Crossing is in the upper left-hand corner. The plan, as shown here, calls for LFI to acquire the property outlined and shaded in blue and construct a 3-story medical office building. The property outlined and shaded in green would continue to be owned by the village, and a combined police station village hall would be constructed on this site. The property is outlined in yellow along Curtis Street is proposed to be redeveloped with townhomes, allowing for a transition to the residential neighborhood to the south. The plan also calls for the extension of a street from Curtis Street to the Washington Crossing. It will provide access to the site from the north and allow for pedestrian and vehicular safety improvements to be made around the Washington Crossing. Construction of the 2 buildings would occur simultaneously, and the existing police station, which is shown with the dotted black line, would remain in operation during construction. Village hall functions would be temporarily relocated. Upon completion of the combined facility, the police station would be demolished, and the parking lots and access drives would be completed. It's at this time that the townhome development project could begin. The financial plan is heavily dependent on revenues generated from the development to fund a substantial portion of the village's costs of construction. Total village project costs are estimated at between $35 and $37 million. Land sale proceeds and available village funds total approximately $11.5 million. Bonds will be issued in the amount of $24.5 million, and a combination of property taxes from the developments and village funding sources will be pledged to repay those bonds. Revenue from the development are projected to cover over 20% of these bond repayment costs. The village has identified several existing revenue sources, leaving about $350,000 per year over 25 years to be funded through new or other existing sources. There are also several features of the key terms language that will help protect the village and reduce risk. First of all, the village will receive the entire land sale amount upfront before the project begins. Also, the development of the medical office includes only a single owner and a single occupant. The language includes project completion guarantees, and the phasing of this project will allow the police station to remain in continuous operation during construction. All of these serve to protect the village financially and operationally throughout this project. If the motion is approved, these key terms will serve as the basis for a redevelopment agreement with LFI. Many other actions necessary to plan for and design the project will also be undertaken. Council action will be required on many of these items during the early part of 2019, and there will be many opportunities for input as these design and approval processes occur. Representatives from LFI are in attendance this evening. This concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. We had comment earlier from Mr. Schofield about the Nelson Meadows project going on for 14 years. That's nothing compared to this one. That's all I'm going to say at this point. I'll open it up for questions or comments from members of the council. Commissioner Jose.
Thank you, Mayor.
Happy holidays to you. Good evening.
Happy holidays to you, Mayor. This kind of feels like Groundhog Day. I think I've been up here for 5.5 years, going on 6, and this is already the 4th time we're talking about village facilities. The exciting part is that I think we're closer to the goal line on making a decision than we've ever been. This might not be the plan that any of us, if given a magic marker, would create, but I think it is the right plan for our community. It gives us an opportunity to construct the new facilities that we need that are replacing ones that Mr. Baker described as functionally obsolete, and I think that's underselling exactly how dramatic the need is. It minimizes the impact on our taxpayers in Downers Grove to the extent we can. It unlocks the economic development potential of this property, bringing new jobs, new employers, and putting government-owned property back on the tax rolls, plain and simple. I think this is a good plan, and I look forward to supporting it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner, and I'm just going to interrupt for a second because I did forget to ask Mr. Baker a question while he was up there. If I missed it, I apologize, but even if you already covered it, I think it's worth reiterating. Could you speak to the Washington Street Railroad crossing aspect of the plan as well?
Yes,
if this goes forward.
Extension of the street shown on the left side of the map in the red shading would allow us to look at potential reconfiguration and improvements to the intersection around Washington, the crossing, and Burlington Avenue, where we know there are a number of problems that exist with commuters trying to cross at that location, the vehicle conflicts that occur, and so we will study options to improve safety from all aspects of how that crossing and intersection functions, and we envision making sure that commuters have an opportunity to provide input and be engaged in the process as we go forward.
Right. So as part of the key terms would be the construction of Washington Street from Curtis to the railroad right of way, and as part of this project, were it to take place, it would be a significant opportunity to improve safety at the Washington Street pedestrian, vehicular, and rail crossing.
Correct.
Thank you. I just want to make sure that that was touched upon. Now back to our regularly scheduled program. Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you,
hello
Mayor.
again.
Good. Let's see. I know why, but if Mike wouldn't mind letting the public, give the public a better idea why this council is taking steps that may obligate a future council. Why are we doing key terms now as opposed to waiting? I know why, but...
We are responding to an offer that was submitted by the developer by LFI. It was received in late September, brought to council in early October. Council had the opportunity to review and direct staff on proceeding, and that's why we brought back the key terms.
Well, we are going to be asked to spend some funds to approve funding for some of these key terms in this current council. So we may be obligating the future council, and the reason why is we have the offer, we have the general plan, we have some terms, and before all the big things start happening and we get into greater detail, we're going to have to spend some money. And that's why we're doing this. So, and I'm glad to see this come through. It's much improved over everything we've had in the past. It's a heck of a lot better than the $52 million Ogden Avenue plan. Last go-round, we had basically three choices. I was in favor of the medical office building, but it came up short financially, and so I couldn't support that. The public made it very clear that they didn't want additional density in the downtown, and so that was a no-go. And the townhomes, as I said in the past, was only a promise to build half of them and maybe the other half, which I thought was rather dangerous. And I think all of us up here, and somebody can interrupt me if they disagree, but I think we all thought that townhomes would be a great usage. And fortunately, we have a much better financial offer. It'll work out better, and there's the possibility of the townhomes as well, as some townhomes as well. So I think the plan is much improved and a great opportunity to address our facilities. And sometimes good things come to those who wait. So I think it's a good thing. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions or comments from members of the council? Commissioner Wallace, good evening. Happy holidays.
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you. Happy holidays to you. It should be no surprise to my colleagues up here that I have lost sleep over this issue, as I've said many times. I've only been up here for one round of facilities. The first time, some of my concerns were a lack of a state budget, 5 or 6 needed to vote as things went further down the road, and I was nervous that things might stall. This plan, I believe, kind of plays to the phrase, good things come to those who wait. I will definitely be supporting this plan, given the operational difficulties that we've seen, given the, we've all been provided a chart of potential maintenance costs as years move on. As an educator, I'm well aware of working in less than ideal conditions or without needed funds and materials, etc. Also, the Washington Street crossing, this is a major safety issue, something that we've been struggling with for several years. So I believe that out of all of the plans that have been presented throughout the years, including the last one that came before us, that this is by far the best plan that we've seen. So I'll be supporting it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Turn to my left. Further questions or comments? Ladies first.
I will go.
Good evening, Commissioner. Happy holidays.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. Happy holidays to you. Interestingly enough, in all the plans that I've seen over 12, 13 years going on that, this is actually the one I haven't lost sleep over, and that's saying a lot. This has got, even though I wasn't a fan of the medical office building, this medical office building that there is being proposed is much lower in profile, which I think is a real distinct advantage. The purchase price for the land is much higher. There's a townhouse component that's still there that buffers the residents to the south. All in all, this is going to work out for us, I think, and I very much do support it. The redoing of the intersection at Washington Street is going to be a large safety pedestrian issue, pedestrian train safety issue, cars. Everything, I can't thank staff enough. This has been such a difficult project for everyone involved, and it has been so time consuming, and I am so pleased to say that I can support this.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Barnett, good evening. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, Mayor. I'm excited about it. I think there's so much good here, and you guys, I won't repeat all the good that my colleagues and staff have talked about. Getting all that at essentially a huge discount is a big deal too. What that really does is I think kind of adds to, Mayor, you've got the longest tenure up here, but the long list of innovative work that the village has done to try and not do things necessarily the way everybody else does them, but do them better and provide a little better value to our residents. And that certainly, this provides unbelievable value to our residents as compared to the alternatives, which are typically to just do this all on our own. It's a great plan. I think it'll probably get better as we go, just like it's gotten better over the last 18 months. As the details get pinned down and sorted out, we'll find challenges, but each one of those will be an opportunity, and I have all the confidence in the world that we'll really hit this thing out of the park. The evidence in the evolving of the plans, the evidence in Fire Station 2, the evidence of quite a bit of work from our staff over a long period of time is that we really get these things to go a little better than we anticipate at the beginning, which is a great thing. I see that same thing happening here. I'm kind of excited because it sounds like there may be unanimous support up here, which if that's the case, I don't want to jump in front of you two. But that's a pretty big deal too, because as Commissioner Waldeck touched on with some budget stuff and this earlier, we are making a commitment. We're making a big commitment here to a lot of people, including residents, but including staff, including developers, including people who want to make an investment in our community. And I think a unanimous decision would be awesome because it would signal that we're pretty serious about this, irrespective of exactly what this council looks like 4 or 5 months from now. So I'm hopeful and remain optimistic, excited to keep it moving.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner White, good evening, happy holidays.
Happy holidays, and to end all the suspense, yes, I support this too. So,
Thank you, Commissioner Wallace, I owe you.
if you took, that was a terrible bet. So, but just, I agree with pretty much everything everybody said so far. I just want to add a couple of personal comments on this. I actually was rather firmly opposed to the plan that was floated in the fall of 14, the beginning of 15, and I was able to identify, at least I know I spoke with staff, about a number of specific flaws. Those flaws are addressed by this plan. The risk is less. In April of 17, I made a motion to move forward with the townhomes. I was ready in April of 17 to accept the townhome proposal and move forward. We didn't go very far with that. But I have to say, this offer is better than that offer for a large number of reasons, which I think many people have already mentioned. But then, so I won't repeat what everyone was saying, but I do want to add, I think it is important that we move forward, if we can move forward unanimously now, that puts us in the best position to be able to have the new council approve this and actually get started. And I suspect that since the 7 of us all agree, if that's indeed the case, you haven't said yet, that we can find out whether there's broad-based support throughout the community, then the developer can have confidence that really the entire community has decided, yes, this is the right time to do this project, and this is the best way to do this project. So as of right now, I fully intend to vote yes in the next week to move forward on the motion.
Thank you, Commissioner. I also intend to vote in favor of this motion when it comes up on our agenda next week to remove all that mystery. And I'll just pick up on something that Commissioner White just said. It sounds like we do have unanimous support for going forward on this next week. And as we continue to discuss this, I would encourage the community, and particularly those who have honorably chosen to put their hats in the ring and run for office on this council next year, to engage in the process and do it here publicly if they have questions or comments, so that all members of the community can have the benefit of those comments and questions and be part of it. Obviously, I don't have the benefit of knowing what others think outside, other than anecdotally from conversations leading up to tonight, but I would encourage those conversations to take place as part of the community conversation. And I would encourage those who are on the ballot in April to participate and make their views known and ask their questions, so we can try to work through them in advance. Because as Commissioner Waldeck points out, yes, our actions next week would commit a future council, and that's a fair question. Although in some respects, everything we do as a council commits future councils. When we change ordinances, we rezone things, we approve projects. By definition, we're committing a future council by every action that we take. I'd like to think that the community together can support and move forward on this, because I do think it makes imminent sense, and to borrow a phrase from one of my predecessors, and would like to continue that conversation. And as I'll be repeating a little bit later, on that very note, this Saturday, December 15th, we'll be having our Coffee with the Council that we have every month from 9 a.m. until 10 a.m. at the Downers Grove Public Library, and we moved it back on purpose so that this presentation could take place so that members of the community, including those running for office, can attend and discuss this topic and ask questions more informally should they choose to do so. That will not be the last opportunity to have that conversation. Clearly, we'll be voting on this next week, but like any other major project that we've done that takes time, there will be numerous meetings and conversations and opportunities to participate and weigh in. And once again, I think it bears repeating. I encourage everyone to do exactly that. Starting with all of you now. I'm going to turn it over to the audience and see if there are any questions or comments from the audience with respect to this item. And we have some. From the far reaches of council chambers, good evening, welcome.
Clearly, I'm Todd Paradis, 417 67th Court. Clearly, I'm a big fan of this. I was a big fan of raising my taxes to put this medical office building in there long ago. Unfortunately, I don't fit into the category of the distinguished guest that got to go ahead of us because I sat through the chickens and the birds and whatever else for regular business, but that's okay. That being said, Bill, I think this is great. Tried to make some notes here. I remember touring the police station with my son as a kindergartner, I think, with the blue tarp. We just get new blue tarps every once in a while. Clearly, Chief Bluter has moved on to different things, but still see him at Dunkin' Donuts in the morning. But, clearly we need to do something here. But the only couple of questions that I have is, you mentioned the townhome project up there, Mike. Who's going to own that property? Because you didn't say who owns that parcel.
The village will retain ownership at this point and then go through a competitive request for proposal process to select a qualified townhome developer.
Okay, and if you pull up Google Maps, I might see my car parked right there. Where is that parking going to go, that commuter parking? Because that's near and dear to my heart.
Correct, yes. We've have allocated spaces. You can see some on-street spaces there along Curtis Street, a few on Washington that will provide.
What Lot L? I'm sorry, Lot L.
Lot L, correct. Lot L in those locations. So we've tried to accommodate Lot L commuter parkers in this plan.
And I'm curious as to, we talked about this, I don't know how many years ago, but I think AAA bond ratings have gone up 100 basis points. So while you're getting more money for the land, construction costs have gone up, interest rates have gone up. Are we really getting the sleeves off of us? Don't get me wrong. I like the project. I liked it then. Are we really getting anything more today other than...
They haven't gone up that much.
100 basis points over 30 years? It's a lot of money. I don't know my calculator, but again, I like that we have consensus of them among everybody, but are we really getting that much more than we thought we were?
Right, and that's a rhetorical question, because I'm sure what you're not suggesting is that we wait and see what happens.
Certainly not.
Thank you.
Just wanted to point out for Mr. Paradis, we did get updated numbers.
Todd,
so
Dave.
They do reflect.
You are a distinguished guest.
So we have the updated numbers in there, so they reflect.
But I'm just saying, interest rates have gone up, construction costs have gone up, so are we really getting whatever the purchase price of the land was versus today? It certainly went up. And again, that's water under a bridge. I want to see it move forward. And I appreciate all of you voting positively for this, as well as the people in the community back there that are running.
We'll leave that to
Thank
you.
you.
We'll leave that to you. Thank you very much for your comments. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jennifer Huda. Full disclosure, my hat is in the ring for the council seat. I just wanted to say this is an item that is very near and dear to my heart. I'm so glad to see a unanimous decision on this moving forward. I know that details will be sorted out as the project moves along, and that's fully understandable. My only concern is while the road improvements that are being proposed on Washington Street will continue the street directly south. My only concern would be the island that it would create for those businesses on to the west of that, which I'm sure is fully aware. But that is my only concern that I wanted to voice. The rest of it, I'm excited to see what the plans are going to bring. So, and that is it.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? All right, well, thank you to those who have spoken. Obviously, more to come, and this will be on our agenda next week for a vote. Sounds like it should be no surprise that everyone's going to vote in favor of it, but I'll bring it back to the council for any final questions or comments on the item before we go to the next one. All right, very good. Well, I just want to add a word of appreciation to my colleagues for all coming together on a very important topic like this. Thank you. We have one more item.
We do, and the final...
After that, how could there be more items?
Well, we'll be quick. Item D, the final on tonight's first reading agenda, is an ordinance amending the storm water utility rate and establishing a water service installation bond. The storm water utility rate is an increase of about 8.5%. It is per our multi-year investment and maintenance plan and consistent with the recently approved FY19 budget. The establishment of a water service installation bond is a new bond that applies for developments outside of the village of Downers Grove in unincorporated areas that are serviced by our water system. This bond guarantees completion of water service installation. We're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Terrific. Thank you. Questions or comments from the council? This is by plan, not too controversial.
Yes.
Questions or comments from members of the audience? Hearing none, I'm going to go out on a limb here and think there aren't any final questions or comments from members.
Actually, I do have
Oh, there are. See it? I owe Commissioner Wallace more.
A very brief comment. I think the reason that we're able to move forward with this, I don't know, calmly, without any controversy, is that there's been a long-standing, consistent direction. There's absolutely no surprise. All of us knew what was going to be asked months, years ago. And that's because village staff's done a fabulous job of crafting a long-range plan. You know, they say when you drive a truck, you're supposed to drive 500 yards down the road, 700 yards down the road, and our village staff does that. So therefore, when something comes to us, we aren't looking at it for the first time. It's like, well, yeah, we knew this was coming, and we knew this was coming a long time ago. So something this significant, like passing our budget with, okay, fine, yeah, pass the budget. It's because the work has been done ahead of time by staff that makes our job look easy. And it's not, but it makes it look easy. So that's why we can do this seemingly just, yep, we all agree. It's because we're looking 800 yards down, staff's looking 800 yards down the road, a mile down the road, and we know what's coming, and we're prepared for it.
Thank you. Any final thoughts from the council? Hearing none.
That ends our first reading, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us to item 8, which is the mayor's report. And just two quick things. One, as I said I would, reminding everyone that we have coffee with the council this Saturday, December 15th from 9 until 10 a.m. at the Downers Grove Public Library. It's an opportunity for members of the community to come and informally have a conversation with members of the council about anything related to the village, but in particular an opportunity to discuss or learn more about the facility sustainability plan that you just heard described. And second, on behalf of the Village of Downers Grove and with all my mayoral powers, I wish Commissioner Nicole Wallace a very happy birthday. And that ends the mayor's report. I'll turn things over to Mr. Fieldman again.
No report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It brings us to item 10, our village attorney's report. Good evening, Ms. Petrarca. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, Mayor. Good evening. 2 items to report tonight. The first is an ordinance approving an amendment to Plan Unit Development Number 51, allowing revisions to Campus Master Plan for Midwestern University. And the second is an ordinance amending the stormwater utility rate and establishing a water service installation plan. Both will be on next week's active agenda. Thank you, Mayor. That is all.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. That brings us to item 11, which is reserved for council member reports. This is an opportunity for members of the village council to share with those in the audience and watching at home either items of interest or other goings on in the community, or to report out to the rest of their colleagues in the village council anything that might be of interest in their role as liaisons to other public bodies. I'll start to my far right tonight with Commissioner Jose.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to say a few words about a couple of events that have been going on in town that have caught a little bit of notoriety. Protesters outside of North High have been displaying abhorrent images and demonstrating distasteful activity that's generated a lot of discussion lately. Now, the First Amendment exists for a reason, and The village has appropriate time, place, manner restrictions to protect the public in ways that are consistent with the First Amendment, and those restrictions can and will be enforced if necessary. But what gets lost in discussing the freedom of speech is the tone and manner of that speech. The goal of protesters like these is to inflame passions and provoke anger or disgust, rather than engage in rational discussion. Today's political discourse too often disintegrates into petty name-calling, threats, and fighting words, and that this is now taking place in Downers Grove is disturbing. But the issue that I just can't look past is the target audience chosen by the protesters. The minors you're choosing to disrupt, to display graphic images to, and hurl some terrible language at, are not the policymakers that you seem to have an issue with. If you're listening, and because it's a step in the right direction, I hope you are, summon the courage to protest the right people. Come down to 801 Burlington on a Tuesday night and say your piece to policymakers. Leave our schools and churches out of it. Thank you, Mayor.
The only thing I would, thank you, Commissioner. The only thing I would add to that is you might want to direct them to the policymakers that have an ability to actually influence the laws that people are discussing.
Baby steps, Mayor.
Because there's also the front of the building where you're happy to meet with them too.
Indeed.
Because we do need to focus on village business here when we're conducting our official business. And we have a longstanding practice of requiring and requesting that those who do speak do focus their comments on issues that are within purview of what a municipality has the ability and the power to control. And I wouldn't want to suggest that we become a site for discussion and debate about issues that, quite frankly, we don't have the ability to control and are more appropriately taken to another level and another location. But other than that, that would be my only comment.
I think I would disagree with you a little bit there, Mayor, but we can have that discussion offline.
Well, certainly not in chambers during village council proceedings. But anytime anyone wants to stand out on the sidewalk, that's, as you say, part of the First Amendment. But you and I can agree to disagree on that point. Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor. On a much lighter note, it's crunch time. You folks know who you are. You haven't started your shopping yet, or you haven't finished it. There's always one more gift that you got to get. And so where else better than to come down to downtown Downers Grove, or actually anywhere in Downers Grove, and get your Christmas shopping finished or started. And you might as well make it fun. As I always say, go to downtowndg.org, and there's opportunities for any kids to visit Santa Claus. I suppose an adult can too. Make your wishes anyway. And then there's the gingerbread man hunt, and a lot of things going on. And if you go to the website, there's some forms to help you with the hunt and some other items. So please visit the website and do your shopping in downtown Downers Grove and help keep our downtown vibrant and on the up track. And get that shopping done. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Wallace.
No report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Barnett.
Thanks, Mayor. I didn't really have anything I thought I'd say, but I guess I want to touch a little bit on the subject Greg touched on. Just to encourage everybody that's watching to take a little bit of comfort that both District 99 and the village are constantly in communication and working together. Our relationship is very close and very cooperative, and what we're doing is our part to ensure that whatever happens in our village happens in a safe environment, with a lot of people paying attention to make sure that everybody's doing their part to be safe. And we have a lot of resources at our disposal, as does District 99, and that those interactions seem pretty chaotic. I'm sure I have 2 kids that go to school every day there. And they look pretty chaotic, and they are, but they're also not completely without, for lack of a better term, observation and oversight by the folks who are there to make sure that everybody's doing the right thing and following the rules and being safe. So it's not the most fun thing ever, but it's also got a lot of people paying attention to it to make sure it goes well for everybody.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Earl.
No report, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner White.
No report.
And I have no further report. So with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn, please.
Mayor Tully, I move the council adjourn.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you and good night.